The tree that stood between us. There are moments in life when ordinary things become symbols of something far greater, a reflection of resilience, of identity, of what it means to stand tall when the world tells you to bend. For me, that symbol was a tree. It had stood in my front yard long before I ever bought the little house on the corner of Oak Ridge Lane. A towering maple, its branches spread wide like open arms, leaves whispering secrets to the wind. It was the first thing I saw every morning from my kitchen window, a sentinel of time, a living reminder that even in small suburbs, beauty could thrive amid concrete and fences. When I moved there, I didn't think much about it. It was just a tree, shade for the summer, amber leaves for the fall, and a blanket of snow across its limbs in winter. But over the years, it became something deeper. It was where I hung my daughter's tire swing, where the neighborhood kids gathered with chalk-stained hands, and where I'd sit on Sunday mornings, coffee in hand, listening to the birds that called it home. It wasn't just wood and leaves, and it was memory rooted in earth. But every story has a force that tries to undo it. Mine came in the form of the new neighbor who moved in across the street, a woman named Karen. The kind of person who seemed to live for control, measuring her world in perfectly cut lawns and symmetrical hedges. To her, order was beauty, and anything that didn't fit that frame was chaos. At first, it was small things. A frown at the leaves that drifted into her yard each autumn. A complaint to the homeowners association about the messy roots that supposedly crept too close to the sidewalk. Then came the notes. Polite at first, but edged with irritation. Each one a little louder in its demand that I do something about the tree. I ignored them at first, believing time and patience would settle things. But she wasn't one to give up easily. Soon her disapproval became a storm. She began calling city inspectors, alleging safety concerns. She took photos whenever a branch shed during a windstorm. And eventually she came to me, not with conversation, but confrontation, insisting that the tree be cut down, citing neighborhood aesthetics and community safety. There are people who see trees as obstacles and others who see them as anchors. For me, it was both a personal symbol and a quiet companion. Through the years, I'd rebuilt my life. After a divorce, after job changes, after learning how to stand on my own again. Cutting it down would have felt like erasing a chapter of my story. Still, her persistence grew. It became the hum beneath my days, the tension you can't quite shake. And when a formal notice from the HOA arrived in my mailbox citing neighbor complaints and visual disruption, I realized this was no longer a private matter. She wanted it gone, and she was willing to fight for it. But what she didn't understand was that the tree wasn't just mine. It belonged to something larger, to time, to nature, to the quiet rhythm of the street itself. That night I sat beneath its branches, the moonlight cutting through the leaves like silver veins. The air was still, heavy with that strange ache of being misunderstood. I could have given in. I could have called a tree service and watched it fall piece by piece until only a stump remained. It would have been easier to yield, to keep the peace, to be the quiet neighbor who doesn't stir trouble. But sometimes peace isn't silence. Sometimes peace is choosing to stand firm, not in anger, but in conviction. So I decided to do something different. If she wanted the tree gone because she thought it was an eyesore, then I would make it impossible to ignore. Not for its inconvenience, but for its beauty. The next morning I took photos, hundreds of them, of the way light filtered through its branches, of the birds that nested high above, of the squirrels that leapt from limb to limb like acrobats of nature. I captured it in every season, every shade, every subtle mood it carried. Then I shared its story online, a story of a single tree standing against the pressure to conform, a story of how sometimes beauty isn't about control, but about coexistence. It began small, a few likes, a few comments from friends, but something about it resonated. People saw themselves in that tree, something old and steadfast in a world that always demanded change. Within days, the photos began spreading. Hashtags bloomed. Comments poured in. Save the Tree became a chant that traveled far beyond my little neighborhood. People sent drawings, poems, and letters addressed to the maple on Oak Ridge Lane. Suddenly, the tree wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to everyone who had ever been told to shrink, to adjust, to fit in. Karen hated it. I could see it in the way she avoided eye contact when she went to fetch her mail, in the way her blinds would snap shut when people stopped by to take photos. The more she tried to erase it, the more it grew. not just in the yard but in the hearts of thousands of strangers who had never even stood beneath its shade. And yet, beneath the surge of attention, I felt something deeper shifting. I began to understand that this wasn't about her anymore. It wasn't about neighborly feuds or HOA regulations. It was about choice, the choice to turn conflict into creation, to meet hostility with humanity, and to let something ordinary become extraordinary simply by believing it could. But as the days passed and the story grew, so did the tension. The HOA held a meeting to review the matter. Reporters began calling. A local news van parked at the end of the street. What had begun as a small act of defiance was now spiraling into something much larger, something public, unpredictable, and powerful. And in the midst of it all, the tree stood silently, leaves shimmering, roots deep, utterly unaware of the storm brewing around it. I didn't know then that the real test was still to come, that standing for something, even something beautiful, can sometimes come at a price. But as the evening sun painted the tree in gold and crimson, I felt no regret. Whatever happened next, I had already made my choice. The tree would